Hello, and welcome to this session of Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. My name is Ashleigh Stampp, and today I'm delighted to be having a discussion about tech and tech careers with Suzanne Shanahan, Chief Enterprise Application Center, Americas, Office of Information and Communications Technology, United Nations. Talking Tech is a series celebrating girls and women in tech. It's been recorded around the world between Girls in ICT Day 2020 and Girls in ICT Day 2022. Girls in ICT Day is an international day marked on the fourth Thursday of each April. The objective is to help create a global environment that encourages young women to consider studies and careers in the field of ICT. The Talking Tech series is brought to you by the ITU, UNICC, and the Office of the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, and is in support of Equals, the Global Partnership for Gender Equality in the Digital Age. Hi, Suzanne, and thank you for joining me today. To kick things off, could you please introduce yourself so that our audience might get to know you a little bit better before we delve into your life in tech?
Sure, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a big fan of the Equals Partnership and the ITU program. I've attended 2 ICT for Girls events and really was a very, very special experience for me. So my name is Suzanne Shanahan, as you said. I work at the United Nations in the field of information and communication technology. I head up a rather large application center where we design and develop and support big, complex systems and applications that are used throughout the world for the United Nations in support of our mandates.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for telling us about your life in tech. Could you kind of describe a little bit more about your current position and the professional experiences that led you to your current standing?
Sure. So I think my path to tech is what I would call a windy one. It certainly wasn't a direct line. I grew up in Brooklyn. My mother came to America from Croatia and my father's parents were from Ireland. And growing up in the city, I was lucky enough to see the UN often on my trips to Manhattan. And I always hoped to work for the UN. My real interests were in languages and culture and politics. And I knew that at one point in my life, I wanted to be working in an international organization. After college, during the war in former Yugoslavia, I made the decision to go and knock on the door. I babysat, I actually nannied and saved my money. I got a ticket and I went to Croatia, which is in the former Yugoslavia, and I got my first job at the UN there. That was a great experience because I was really working on the ground for the UN, doing what the UN is here to do, which is to support peace and security. And while I was there, I had my first experience really working in what we called EDP, electronic data processing, but was a sort of earlier term for technology. I worked on some databases and I got my first taste of what tech can do. And after being there for 3 years, I came back home to New York and I continued working for the UN in the secretariat, in the building behind me, in my background. I stayed in the field of peacekeeping operations, and at the time, tech was really transforming the way, not just the UN, but the way many organizations and companies were doing their day-to-day work. I started working in training people. I had a really kind of great early exposure teaching others how to use applications and technology. That was when the mouse first came into being. So teaching people actually how to use these new devices. And as a global organization, we were able to use technology to communicate through email. I mean, these were new things, right? It sounds crazy, but through email, through databases and systems to help us share information across all of the different field missions. I worked as a database administrator, and I got my first taste of programming in programming applications. I stayed with the UN for a number of years and then decided to pursue a master's degree in computer science at NYU. And shortly into that, I really felt that I had been doing at that point several years of programming, and I wanted to look into a more leadership track and management. and I switched in my educational path. And instead, I pursued a master's degree in public administration. So the combination of the technical exposure, programming, I really worked in every facet of IT support, help desk, infrastructure support, and applications. I continued on that path, but I really found myself drawn to systems and applications. And that's kind of been my roadmap since then into bigger projects, more complex projects, and working my way up the ladder with the help of a lot of supportive mentors and managers to where I am now, which is really overseeing big software development teams around the world to build solutions for the UN.
That's amazing. Wow. Okay. So were you ever discouraged from the pressure from the profession because of your gender as a woman?
I think that probably what would be considered discouraging was often being the only woman in a team or only woman in a meeting in the area of tech. So this was quite some time ago. I'm going on 30 years at the UN. So in the early days, the teams really were predominantly male. And just I think it was a question of building confidence in my own technical abilities and just being able to be surrounded by people who didn't look like me, who were mostly men, but whom I think I ultimately did get a lot of support from. So in any situation where a person is the only one of their kind, whether it's the only man in a group of women or the only person of color in a group of people who are another color, that always brings with it some discouragement. But I think you also learn a lot from those experiences. One thing that was sometimes challenging is I've never been a really drawn to mathematics or statistics, although I studied those things in school. I always was drawn to languages, and my degree was in Russian, actually. And I had a brilliant professor at NYU. When I was feeling a little bit discouraged, I said, I'm not sure this is right for me because I'm not a really big fan of deep math studies. And he looked at me and he said, but you love languages. You've studied 6 or 7 languages, and software development programming is just a language. It has syntax, it has grammar, it has structure. And that really clicked for me, right? And I knew that I was I was able to marry up those parts of myself that really, I think, made me a strong software developer.
Wow, that's amazing. And what would you say what about being a woman has posed the greatest challenge for you professionally? I know you kind of touched on that a little bit, but what would you say would be the greatest challenge?
I think that one thing that was difficult was growing up in sort of mid-career as a mother. I have 2 children. I'm very proud of both of them. And that kind of life work balance was sometimes difficult, when you're going through multiple pregnancies and small children, and you're kind of balancing that, go to work, be professional at work, and fielding all of the day-to-day duties that mothers are often dealing with, right? In some ways, the UN was a great place to work as a young mother because they have strong supports and benefits for mothers. But it's hard to sometimes deal with those scenarios that come up day to day and still be working. So I know that that's in many cases, I see young families today, and I do see much more of a sharing of those responsibilities between young fathers and young mothers. So I think we're all kind of struggling with that at the moment, but that was difficult. That was difficult, balancing the life and the work responsibilities.
I'm pretty sure you've gotten the support that you need. I mean, you're here now today, so we're grateful for that. But what would you say would be a personal strengths you'd consider to be most vital to your success as a woman in tech?
I think that I have 2 characteristics that I'm proud of. One is that I have a lot of optimism and passion for my job, and I try to bring that to the people that work with me and the people that work for me. I'm 100% believe in the work that the UN is doing, and so to be able to bring the other thing that I'm so excited about, which is technology, into doing the things that the organization are trying to achieve in the areas of peace and security, economic development, humanitarianism. That was great. Passion, and I think excitement. And the other thing I bring to work, or I try to bring to work every day, is empathy. And I do think that often women are really able to tap into empathy, and empathy is at the heart of designing technology solutions for people that work for people and meet their needs. So having it some degree of emotional intelligence can really be what takes a team over the finish line.
Wow. What would you say over the years of experience in tech, what would be some of the most significant changes you have seen in the industry? Is there anything particularly surprising or exciting that you'd like to share?
I guess I never lose my sense of awe at the speed at which things are evolving. The speed at which computing power is changing. The biggest problems that we faced 10 years ago, we can't even imagine those problems today. One of the biggest problems we faced in peacekeeping in the early days, without really a well-established internet, was communicating and actually sharing data in the deep field in the countries where they had no telecommunications infrastructure. I mean, connecting to the internet was the big game changer. And we had to design things. Can you imagine having to do applications that exchange data over a modem? I mean, many of the kids who look at these videos won't even know what a modem is. But I mean, the amount of data, it was like passing data through a skinny little straw that you stir a coffee with, right? So everything had to be simple and dumbed down within years. I mean, we're talking about a global expansion of broadband. That problem disappears, right? So there were transformational piggybacking and leapfrogging of technologies that make it much easier to do the work that we want to do. So I think I'm fascinated by the speed. Other major changes that are coming down the pipe is the way that the tools we use to build applications have become much simpler to use. So even young children can build apps today. It's really more about finding the problem and imagining a solution. You don't necessarily have to be a hard code, a hard deep science coder to solve problems. So I find that to be empowering, and also allows for a much broader set of capabilities and people to get involved in tech. Of course, artificial intelligence is changing the way we're doing things, and geospatial information systems, so GIS. It's every day now to look at your phone and see where you are, and being able to, I can get on my phone and see where someone lives in another country and walk down their street. That is bringing the world closer together and creating more of a shared common experience. I guess the final thing I would say that I see major changes is coming through virtual reality. So virtual reality is changing the way we even consider reality. And some of the applications of that, I was just reading a book yesterday about how VR is going to be a real game changer for depression. It's a real game changer for training and education. The freeing of a person of their physical space and location is going to change the world. And I think the more we can get young people understanding how we can use VR and creating real everyday solutions in VR is going to be amazing.
Yes, for sure. I can see that the technology is definitely making technology easier to use. So that's really a good thing. Can you share with us a few of your proudest moments from your life as a tech professional?
Sure. I think the first really big exciting project that I worked on, which was in 2002, was building from scratch the first UN recruitment system. Before that, it was paper applications. People filled out a form and they mailed it in. And this really limited job opportunities for people, right? Because those papers came in by the box load. How fast can people really read them? There's no way to process them quickly. And it really limited who could find or even know that jobs existed. The whole process of applying to a job was very complicated. Getting an interview, you'd have to be able to do it over the phone or come in to a physical location. So we did build the first online recruitment system. And again, it wasn't commercial. We didn't buy it. We built it. And that changed the way the UN post jobs and find the people that work for the UN. And I think that made the whole process a lot fairer and a lot more transparent. And it opened up the opportunity of working for the UN to the whole world. So that was a huge achievement. And the teams that worked on it, and remember, this was back in 2002, the team that developed it was in a completely different country than the team that was designing it, from the team that was supporting it. So it was a real virtual team. That today means nothing. I mean, me and you are having a virtual meeting, but back then there was no virtual meeting. So that was a really, trial by fire experience, and it served me well for the rest of my career.
Oh, yes, for sure. We have seen it play out time and time again, even with the pandemic that has occurred in 2020. And even till now, it has created such an industry shift, right? So technology is changing and we're adapting a lot. So speaking of pandemic, do you think that the pandemic has created any industry shifts that directly impact the employment of women in technology?
I mean, I think it's a complete, paradigm shift. The way we think about work and the way we think about how we can work, we're not going back. There's no turning back. And for me, the biggest change is flexibility, right? So those challenges I told you about earlier, managing children or taking care of parents or struggling to kind of get the life working well, it's just different. The 2-hour commute that would have taken 2 hours away from being with your family, that's gone, right? You get up, you plug in, you get online, and you can also make some space in your life. And I think employers are much more flexible. They're more concerned with getting the job done than maybe how and where you get the job done. And I think that does open up a lot of opportunity for women. We at the UN have been struggling for years to put women in peacekeeping operations because they would have to leave their family, and they would have to leave their family for a long time. And now we can bring a lot more women into that type of work remotely, and men as well. I also think that the pandemic has made people a little bit more flexible about trying different jobs. It's opened up a lot of fields to people. And also I think that the pandemic and virtual work has changed education. So 10 years ago, you really had to go to the brick and mortar school to get an education. And now I know young women and young girls can attend universities virtually in other countries even, and tap into skills and education that would have been very difficult for them to tap into before. I listened to an incredible podcast about young girls in Afghanistan who are now basically being kept in their homes, who had to leave school and stop going to school, but are managing to continue their education during this difficult time because they're doing it online. And so I think that just making that remote life more acceptable and more available, because the tools you need, the connections you need are cheaper, I think that is going to really change the way women can participate in technology.
Oh, wow. And what would you say, or how would you predict will be the most significant changes we have to look forward to from the tech industry, and what new career opportunities would you say would arise in the field?
Well, I can tell you what I'm seeing as some trends and what I hope will continue. I think that the world has woken up to the value of diversity of thought. And what I mean by that is that teams that are made up of people who look different, who come from different backgrounds, who are different genders, are stronger teams, because competition of ideas yields the best outcomes. So it's not just about the Me Too movement or about, doing a favor or trying to hit your numbers to get it, equal amounts of men and women. It's about a real deeper value that when you have a team that has a mother or a grandmother and a young man and someone from different countries and different backgrounds, they will see problems differently, because you bring your life experience to everything you see, to every problem you identify. They will see new problems, they will see new opportunities, and they will find different ways through a competition of ideas and perspective to build a better outcome. And this is changing the game, because I think engineering companies, corporations, nonprofits are all looking to bring that diversity of thought into engineering and into tech. And I see better performance from teams that are balanced and more diverse. And I think that's opening doors. I think those conversations were not being had before.
Yes, for sure. And we know that diversity and inclusivity have been trending initiatives that companies and organizations have been trying to achieve. And we understand that these matters are very important to you personally. So would you please share with us your role in these initiatives, explaining what type of obstacles have been most challenging and where your efforts have had the greatest impact in the tech departments at the UN?
I think that the biggest challenge we're facing is really an absence of a pipeline of young girls and women who are coming out of STEM and computer science. Although there's more interest and there's definitely a lot more, media attention and around trying to get women into tech, we are really looking at a dry well. I mean, the number of girls that are graduating with computer science degrees is actually going down while they're going up in medicine and in law. We're finding that women are leaving the tech workforce because either they're not getting equal pay for equal work, or they're not getting the flexibility and the benefits that they need to manage work-life balance, or to even seek career progression, right? Those are all very big challenges and frustrating challenges. To this day, the applications that we get for jobs in tech at the UN are, overwhelmingly male number of applications. So even in an organization that wants to have gender parity with equal men and equal women working, it's still very hard to find suitable candidates. And I think that the way that has to change is to really be appealing to younger girls, to show this as a field that's not only exciting, not only a place where they can bring their best ideas and their interests to change the world, quite frankly. We have to support them in that. And at the UN, I try to do things like support you in this video to attend the ICT for Girls events. But I think a much more exposure in middle schools is necessary. At the UN itself, me personally, I'm a gender focal point. I'm working within my organization to try to do outreach to attract more women candidates into the positions that we offer at the UN. I'm also working with the women in OIC to see how do we make a more inclusive environment and to support career progression. But the UN is only one organization. And what we really need is a global workforce of talented young women who want to get into tech. And I think that often tech is perceived of by young girls as coding and video games. And I think it's so much bigger than that. There are so many more jobs you can do and types of roles you can play. And we really have to make raise awareness about how big the field is and how many opportunities there are. And in fact, if you're looking at an economic advantage, getting into tech is probably one of the best ways you can change your economic future. And I think that needs to be better understood. So at the UN, I'm doing it on a personal level. I'm trying to support organizations like ITU, and hopefully I will be able to support the Equals Partnership. But we have to find more grassroots ways, like whether it's through local schools or through programs to get the word out.
Yes, that's amazing. There was an article that I had read some time ago by Harvard Business Review, and it stated that women in leadership positions are more effective leaders than men. So it's kind of interesting how a lot of women are kind of shying away from STEM even though it has a lot of benefits. So could you kind of please speak on the strengths you believe a diverse leadership brings to an organization?
I think that that probably builds on my last thought about, I think diverse teams are stronger. I think diverse leadership is stronger because, every individual comes with their own perspectives, their own personality types. And, there are some stereotypes about the kind of, leaders men are versus the kind of leaders that women are. I think both bring real talent to the equation, and you have good and bad leaders on both sides of the genders, right? I do think that what I've seen, where I've seen really maybe impressive and role models in women, I do see women again bringing empathy into leadership. I think sometimes women always bring a perspective, or I would hope would bring a perspective of, what does it feel like to be in that person's situation, and to take that into their thinking. I think women can also bring maybe some peacemaking to some situations. I think they handle conflict well. I don't like to say that women are better leaders than men. I have not found that to be the case in my life. I do think that women bring different qualities of leadership sometimes to the equation. And what I like best is when there's a balance of leadership, because I think both sides benefit, one from the other. Aside from there being a real, statistical imbalance on women in tech, you also see that imbalance coming into the leadership, the leadership tier. And you also see that real imbalance when it comes to investment. So I know for a fact that women who are entrepreneurs in tech, they attract less investment from venture capitalists and from investment. And that has to change. And the way that happens is by getting more women into investment, right? So we really, it's not just one industry that needs a kind of balancing. It's really across the board. I think when women are given the opportunities to lead, as you mentioned, and as the Harvard Business Review has probably acknowledged, they do really, really well. But they're also held to a higher standard to get into those positions. So it could just be by the virtue of that competition that you are getting really, really good people into those positions. And that's good. We want talented, powerful women who've got the skills to bring to the table, but sometimes the process is not fair.
Oh, yes, for sure. All right, so my final question to you is, since this series is about girls and women in tech, could you please tell us any advice or encouragement you'd like to share with the youngest members of our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think I love working in tech. To me, it is one of the most powerful ways to change the world and to change and people's lives for the better. I'm amazed at how fast it's changing, and the power it gives us to do incredible things. And that's not just about making money or creating gadgets or creating, entertaining applications, but really to improve the human condition. Technology is all around us, and you're younger than me, so you're growing up digitally native, and I see even younger kids who it's just the air they breathe, right? So it's very accessible to them in a way that maybe it wouldn't have been when I was growing up. And it's not, technology isn't for boys, it isn't for girls, it isn't for men or women. It's for all of us, and it can be negative force or it can be a liberating force. And I think that at no point in history before now have people of all ages been able to be heard, right? A 7-year-old can start, TikTok videos, and the whole world can hear what that 7-year-old has to say. And it's really, it's a big competition of ideas, but young people have a voice, and young people can go out there and actually use technology to be heard and make changes. And I think that maybe what I would say to young girls is learn more about all the different jobs and all the different roles that are available in tech, and start getting your hands, into projects and doing things. Build small apps, find projects you can get on top, join, and mentors that you can learn from. And because there really are so many jobs, it's not just about coding. It's the person who designs an interface, it's digital media and graphics design, it's the architecting of solutions. It's also infrastructure and working in deep computing, but there's so many more jobs now available. And I feel like people don't learn about them or get experience with them until very, very late. Whereas if young girls knew about these different jobs, they can kind of like start trying them on for size. If you ask me what part of technology I'm most involved in, or what appeals to me the most, it's called business analysis. So what I love to do is look at a problem and figure out the parts of that problem, and how people do something, or the scenario that they're working in and the problem they're trying to solve, and then say, how could I apply technology to change this, to make it faster, to make it better, to make it cheaper, to make it more pleasant, or a more kind of effective way to solve a problem. And that's a very different job from somebody else's job, who might be administering a system or designing a network. There are just so many opportunities, and I would really love to see young girls getting a taste of that and learning a little bit more about that. One way to do that, at the last ICT for Girls event that I attended, was to get girls involved in what's called design thinking, which is, it's not about the coding, right? It's about, what's the problem we want to solve today? What would a new solution look like? And then you work backwards from that, and you may build the different pieces of that solution or that app. And in this case, we were talking about building an app, but there are a lot of different roles to play in solving that problem, and they're all part of technology. And so that's where I think there's huge potential to get girls excited, because I think that is something that gets girls excited, right? They may not be as interested, and some of them are, in playing a video game, but they might be very interested in creating an app to make them feel safer when they're walking home from school. That was one of the problems we looked at ICT for Girls Day.
Oh, yes, for sure. I just want to emphasize that tech is everywhere. I mean, I believe that tech is a fundamental tool that may assist in problem solving, like what you said. And every field has a space to apply technological understandings in a very useful and pragmatic way. So I think that tech is more than simply just a career path. So, and I feel like because without tech, we would not have a lot of things that we have today.
I think it's a great initiative. I'm always racking my brain on, how to reach more girls and to get them into real life experiences. I think that they have to touch it, right? They have to be involved they have to have that aha moment for themselves to understand that, wow, this is something I could really get excited about. And I feel like we lose that opportunity in middle school. And I feel like a lot of STEM, right? There's only one T in the whole STEM, right? A lot of STEM is about other sciences, which are valid, right? But I feel like the tech in real terms, the way young girls are exposed to tech is really only through coding clubs, or only through some kind of, which is good. I mean, we need coders. Lord knows we're on track to have not enough of them for the next 100 years. But there's other parts to play. And where I see women excelling are sometimes in those roles where communication, and I probably should have mentioned that, but where communication is critical. Project management, huge area where we really are short of people who understand the tech part and the business part, and who can navigate that interaction, right? And a lot of the hard skills, I mean, men and women who are on the deep tech part of it, they don't always want that interaction, right? They're
Yeah.
anyways engineers, right? So the bridging role between engineering and the client, or engineering and the user, that's a great space for women who understand both, who can bring empathy and communication skills to the table, to the betterment of the whole team. There's also opportunities around, as I mentioned, business analysis and user interface design. So user interface design it depends on empathy. Being
Yeah.
able to see through another person's eyes, being able to put yourself in their lived experience is a really difficult skill to teach, but also to value. And I think that I see, you know, women doing really well in that space too. It's funny, sometimes I have my teams do walkthroughs of their apps, right? And I ask questions, and it's like they think that I'm not so smart. Why am I asking these questions? It's so obvious. And I said, I know the answer to the question. I'm asking you the question from the perspective of the person who I know is going to be using the application. And we have to be that voice and mindset of our users to design really good tech. And that's sometimes an afterthought. I mean, big companies are getting better about building it in, but half the time you're like, why is this, where is the button? Like, why is the button here? Oh, you know, they didn't think about it. They didn't think about where that's where we always put the button. Okay, people, that's not where your eyes are. That's not how someone is going to, it's not the best experience. You know, these small changes, and the companies that get that, like Apple's of the world, they change the game over and over again. Do you remember, you know, when they got rid of that button, the home button?
Yes.
You even remember that? On the phone, there was a home button, right?
Yes.
People lost their minds. Like, what are we going to do without the home button? We didn't need the home button, right?
No.
It was this sort of more creative way at looking at solving the problem that's what makes the big changes and takes us forward, right? I watch my kids, and they don't type anything. It's amazing. Like their go-to is speech, right?
Yes.
I never, like, I'm like, why am I typing an entire sentence into Google? All I have to do is say it. It's a mind shift, right? But now in my mind shift, which is a problem, I have to keep working on it. My kind of mindset will always be oriented, or it's now still oriented towards a solution that would optimize the typing.
Yes.
When no one is going to do that, who's under a certain, so that empathy is at the heart of smart design and human-centered design. And I think women and young girls can play a great part in promoting human-centered design, especially because there's a whole world of products and solutions that they need to identify and that they should build. There are so many spaces and places, especially around healthcare for women, around wearables for women, around tech for women, and women are not building that tech.
Yeah,
they need to build they need to be involved in that engineering, or the outcomes are just not going to be good enough. I agree.
I feel like there is going to be a shift in what the professions that women choose in the future, hopefully.
But if there aren't enough women graduating, we're still going to have that imbalance, and maybe the education process changes as well, right? Because you don't need to have a master's degree in computer science to be a leader in tech.
That's true. Yeah, and I think it all comes down to awareness, but it's not really spoken about a lot. So a lot of women are not aware of these things. So I don't think it's too late for a lot of women to shift into the technology industry. There are a lot of women and even men who don't have a tech background, and they're in tech right now. So
for sure.
It's still positive. It's still possible right now.
I think those bridging opportunities, the crossover paths, need to be easier to find and easier to navigate. So I crossed over, right? I did some tech in my early part of my career, but I also spent a lot of my early career in admin. I didn't say that in the piece. I didn't even really think about it. But I mean, I was definitely in admin. My background was in languages and liberal arts. And I
Yeah.
just was so seduced by technology. I was so
Yeah.
excited about it. And I said, what do I need to do to like do that horizontal?
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, I still have all the memories and experiences and mindset of being on the administrative side of the house. So I bring that into everything I build, right? Because I remember what it was like to do those jobs. And so whenever you have that kind of shifting back and forth, all the people that move from one area, let's say you're in art or music, or you're in history or politics, when you come over into tech, you bring that lived experience and you open up doors into new engineering opportunities. That's why design thinking works. That's why cross-functional teams work, because people bring the mindset in.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to NYU, they had this program. It was like a 1-year intensive computing program that was designed to help you do almost like an accelerated 4-year undergrad in computer science.
Wow.
To then go into computer science master's program. And I did that. And I thought I was very grateful for that opportunity. Ultimately, I didn't pursue the master's because I wanted more of a management track. But we don't have a lot of those like horizontal pathways, you know.
Yeah.
I think that the shortages of enough engineers and technical people will open those doors, because
Yeah.
you're going to look more for people with potential, and you're going to start training them rather than looking for the person with the perfect engineering degree, because there's the tech companies are swallowing them up. But as we mentioned, every organization needs tech. It's not just the tech companies, right? So I hope that opens some opportunities for
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah. I just want to thank you so much. I'm so grateful that I got to meet you, and Jennifer too. You guys have been so helpful. I've learned a lot throughout this interview and even before in our initial meeting. I mean, I'm just really grateful. That wraps up our session today for Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. Thank you so much, Suzanne. I really enjoyed our chat today, and thank you so much to our viewers for watching.
You're welcome. Best of luck to you and to the project.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Suzanne.